So I'm glad to present today for this conference entitled The Surrounding Planet, Planetary Dreams and Data to the artist and professor Darlene Faris Labar. And she is the department chair and professor of art and design at East Stroudsburg University. And she oversees the 3D printing program and lab located in the Art Plus Design department. And she uses 3D printing and other emerging technologies to focus her art on a variety of plant species. Her art requires research through environmental interaction and the study of a variety of ecosystems. It focuses on preserving plant and flower species through digitally designing and 3D printing. She has been presented by Women in 3D, the Additivist Cookbook, Whitney Museum, New York Hall of Science, Athens Onassis Cultural Center, 3D Pioneers, 3D Print Show, and her work has been exhibited around the world, such as Assam State Art Museum in India, Tomorrow's à Les Uniques in Nantes, en France, and Ecovisionaries en el Matadero de Madrid, in España, where she presented endangered species on the red list through 3D printed work called Ancient Mediterranean Flowers. Most recently, her work of 3D printed representation of rain formed from flowers, titled Atmospheric Chords, was shown in Vancouver, Houston, and also in Brasilia. So I'm glad to welcome Darlene, to welcome you, and you have all our attention.
So thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm honored to be a part of this amazing lecture series. My dear friend, his name is Hugo Fortes. He recommended for me, and thank you, Victoria, for bringing me into this fabulous group. So I just want to start off by saying that, you know, with all the technology that I'm involved in and all the virtual meetings and virtual presentations, this is really where I would rather be. I would rather be walking through the forest. There's so much there to see and to become one with. When we look at this forest, we see a lot going on, and it's my goal to be able to translate, kind of like translating a language. If I can translate what I see here with every species and how they interact and how they work together, that would be a fabulous life goal of mine. This is something I'm also very much aware of. We have this happening all around us. We have it right now. We're really talking in ones and zeros, and we see each other, but behind the scenes, it's really ones and zeros. Our world is filled with data, but this data hasn't really just happened in the last, handful of years. I would say the data has been around for a long time, and it's been around before human beings. And I would like to then present here that, when it comes to data and how we are created, it's all embedded within. We have certainly DNA data that we are all made up of. Certainly we don't think of ones and zeros when we think of the data that we are created by, but there's also this plant data as well. And it's very fascinating for me to try to, again, translate it, to understand it, to become even more curious as deeper as I go into each understanding of a plant species. My prior work, this is what I used to do. I have been creating work about nature for over 30 years. I started off certainly in college, and I found myself by working with materials and realizing that these materials can be formulated to start to create sculptures that replicate and get us to understand and open our eyes more with what we think of as in nature. These are landscapes that are composed of flower pots, some of them that you see. And to me, I call those portable landscapes. Portable landscapes that can be, taken down and recreated in a spot where there's no landscapes at all. Our cities, urban areas, our homes, they're all 90-degree angles mostly. And so I would love to try to break that up. And that was what I was trying to do with this work. My work has a variety that is stemmed with it too. These are large scale honeycombs. I attempted to have my own honeybees at one time, and I videoed them and fell in love with the sounds of the bees and felt like they were almost like monks singing. So in this installation here, I was able to bring together monks from Hangzhou, China, into the sounds of the bees, and they kind of sang together. And this whole piece was about more about meditation and becoming again one with nature. My very last work before I really got involved with 3D printing and digitally modeling plants and flowers was this installation called Water Has No Boundaries. I witnessed, as with probably all of you, the tsunami in Thailand and what happened to that place. I watched it on the media, on TV, and it was just the most overwhelming moment for me to see how water can just be so forceful. We are made up of worlds with boundaries. We have fences, we have, city boundaries, country boundaries. And however, water has no boundaries. Water flows from one point to the next, and what we do to water over here affects water over there. So I wanted to create this piece that collected water from various locations. So I was able to, in this map here you see in the lower portion, that's where I live, not far from New York City. I actually live in another boundary from New York City called Pennsylvania, which is on the boundary of New Jersey. And so I was able to collect water from all the waterways all along this edge here. If anybody ever wants to visit this area, please let me know. And I would give you a lot of tips on the best places to see the cleanest water and to play and have recreation in the water. So this was my last piece that I created before I got into plants. And again, it was about collecting water and this idea of collecting water and bringing water together that was more of an undulating stream of water. Water that was composed of all sorts of water. And it was also made out of fencing material. So this idea that water flowing over the landscape composed of material that is used to separate us from different portions of land. So this has been happening all my life, prior even to my life, of course. And as much as I've become so passionate and just really trying to be dedicated to try to make people aware of what's going on, it seems to be unstoppable. And it's a sad moment, to think of this. And so I thought about my own area, being that it might be difficult to save the world. Maybe I could start somewhere. And so I started thinking about land that we have preserved that people would like to develop and cut down the trees and make homes out of. These lands, though, they are composed of plant species that have been there for hundreds of years, that have connected within those very precise environments, that have worked together with other species, all together in that singular biodiversity that they live in. So when I look at where I live, this county here, I look at where there is preserved land and there's really not very much. Everything else is privately owned. People can do whatever they want with this land. Um, and it's a little scary to think of that. Yes, we have been in the largest for a mass extinction from the last 65 million years. And this is where we live. We are alive, and this is our time now. The Amazon forest. Yeah, I spoke with my friend Hugo in Sao Paulo, and he was telling me that this is really bad now with COVID because people are taking over more. There's not much, things that are not stopping people, going into the Amazon forest and cutting down the trees and destroying the land. Yeah, we saw the fires, and this was incredibly devastating too when this happened a few years ago. So historically, there are artists that are very much in tune with nature and plants. Albrecht Dürer, for example, in the 1500s. And with these studies, I wondered, from the last, 500 years, are these plants still around or are they just documented through artwork? Um, yes, I see some familiar plants. There are the dandelions here back in the back area. And there's some other interesting flowers and plants that I actually don't recognize, but I'm hoping that they are still around and they have survived the last 500 years. Other artists, I love this story, Maria Sibylla Merian. She would travel and document overseas with her daughter. She would take her with her in the 1700s, which as a single woman at the time, traveling with her young daughter in a world that was really meant for men at the time, I think this was pretty fabulous. And her work studied the life cycle, and she puts it all together in one moment in time on one sheet of paper. And it's just stunning to compose that into our brains, to condense a time frame of a life cycle of plants and insects. Emily Dickinson, we have in the 1800s, she had pressed flowers and made what we call herbariums. This has been around for a long time. And in the Victorian era, this was a moment where people really took pride into understanding flowers and plants and connecting with nature. They used plants for medicine. There was a lot of curiosity for that as well, and poetics, and all sorts of artwork as well. But the only problem with this is that it actually, presses the flowers, it dehydrates them, it changes the color, it makes them fragile. So through time they can break and fall apart. I then came upon this duo, Leopold and Rudolf Blaschka, and their lives were in the 1900s, and they created glass flowers. It's a father-son duo, and they have this little primitive setup in their homes at the time with a little gas flame, and they made their own tools and blew glass and folded the glass and colored it actually with watercolor pigment. And they made these incredible flowers. So if you get to travel to Boston, you have to see this. You will be in awe. This is at the Natural History Museum at Harvard. And it is a collection of hundreds of glass flower species that Leopold and Rudolf Blaschka had made in their lifetime. And I guarantee you will be in awe. So save yourself some time.